Hello, I'm Aaron with Insulspan. Today we're going to talk about sealant and how to properly seal off a home. Part of the Insulspan package is providing the SIP seal gun as well as the SIP sealant. So we're going to show you how we get our sealant gun and everything applied together. So here's our kit. So we're going to open this up. And we've got our sealant gun. Typically most manufacturers, depending on the type of gun, this particular gun actually comes with the tips pre-cut to the 3/8 bead that we want to see. So other manufacturers, the tips aren't pre-cut. You just want to make sure and cut that to a 3/8 bead. That's the application that we want to see within our bead system. So we've got our sealant here, and you can see here when we put this in, it's actually comes to a point there. So what I like to do is just take a pair of dikes. Some guys will take a 16-penny nail and shove it in a bunch of times. Sometimes you do that little tip here gets caught up within the glue gun. So I like to use a pair of dikes, cut that tip right off. So then it exposes that glue right to the full end of the glue gun, so you don't have to worry about that tip getting caught up in the glue gun later. Attach that, make sure your 3/8 is facing. Now we're ready to apply with the 3/8 bead. All right, we've got our deck system here. We're ready to put our bottom plate down, but of course first thing we got to do is put our sealant down. So what I've done, we're going to set a 6.5 inch panel, so I pulled over 6 inches right in my chalk line so I know where my plate's going to be. And now with the sealant, I want to stay about 1 inch to 1.5 inches outside of the deck to put that plate down. And again, I want to put that nice 3/8 bead throughout that. And now I'm ready for my bottom plate. All right, we got our first plate down. Now we're going to put our second plate again. We're staying back about 1.5 inches from the edge. And we're ready for our last plate. All right, we've got our bottom plate set, so now we're ready to set our first panel. What I like to do is I like to mark out where my panels are within the wall, so it allows me to see if I'm growing or what I have to do. So I've got my first panel marked out right here, so I'm going to glue this bottom plate just enough to where that panel is going to go. And I'm gluing right there along that bottom on the inside as well as the outside. All right, we've got our first panel ready to be glued up and set, so I've got that glue down. So now I'm going to set this first panel in here. Flush right there with the deck. Flush there, and see how that glue is oozing out? That's exactly what I want to see at all my bottom and all my seams as we go through this. So I want to make sure that glue is creating that air sealant that we want to see. All right, I'm ready to put this corner connection panel on. So one thing that we want to do, again, we're using this sealant as a way to stop airflow. So I'm going to come up along this corner here where this next panel is going to come. I'm going to put my nice bead right down that panel. Get a little bit in that section there where it's going to come. And again, I'm doing the inside plate and the outside plate. All right, we've got our sealant on the wall where it's going to connect. We've got our sealant on both the inside and the outside of the bottom plate. We're going to set this next panel for this corner connection. All right, next we're going to talk about our spline configurations. Just to point out, a wall spline and a roof spline get sealant the exact same way. So right here we've got a single spline. So we're going to put a nice little bead of glue right there where the foam meets the OSB on both the inside and the outside. And we're going to bring our spline right in. And now we're ready to bring on our next panel. Now we're going to seal that off to bring our next panel on. So again, we're treating it just like a bottom plate or anything else. We're going to run that nice little bead right along the side, and also don't forget to do your bottom plate again, that nice bead. And again, we're doing the inside and the outside. We're stopping that airflow, and that's exactly what this sealant is for, to stop that airflow within the panel system. So we're nice and sealed off. Bring our next panel right on. And we're all set. You can see here we brought these two panels together and see how that sealant is just squeezing right out between those panels. That's what we want to see when you're applying the sealant to lumber or block splines or anything like that. You want to see that when you pull that panel nice and tight, that sealant just comes right out between those seams, so you know you got a nice, good seal and you're nice and airtight. All right, our next spline configuration is a double 2x spline, which is going to go here, but it's very critical to make sure that that sealant is also going in between those 2x's before you nail them together. Alrighty, so we've got our glue gun here and we ran out of glue and we actually let it sit overnight, you know, and if any time you do that, you know, you're probably gonna have to dry that tip up, so we're gonna replace that. So you set that tube down for a minute. This just pops off, and then in the box comes extra tips. So we're gonna take that off there, pitch it aside. We've also got the old sealant tube, so we're gonna peel that off. Throw that aside, get our new tip reinserted. I'm going to put our sealant in, take our dikes again, cut that tip off, and we're all set and ready to go again with our sealant. All right, now we're going to install our double spline. So I'm going to go ahead and put the sealant right inside the panel here, like I've done on both the inside and the outside. Making sure I get a continuous bead. You can see here how I put that double lumber together, and it's actually got the glue, so it's been glued and nailed off. So I want to make sure I get that sealant in between the 2x's as well, so I'm not getting any airflow through the panel system itself. And then we're installing that right there. We've got our next panel ready to set. We've put our double spline in. We've actually put all the sealant where it needs to go on the inside. We've got our sealant down here along the bottom plate. So as I mentioned previously, I like to put the sealant on the male edge when I'm bringing panels together, so I would do it here. But depending on the size of the panel you're working with, it's not easy to do that at times, so I'm going to show how even you can still put it on the female side, on both the inside and the outside, keeping that bead continuous. And you can rub the excess off on the panel so you're not getting sealant all over you. So we've got that ready to go. I'm going to pick that panel up. Slide that nice and tight, and it's all ready to go, all ready to be nailed off. So now we're going to install the sealant for our top plate. This would be treated the same way whether it's a flat wall or a beveled wall. Application is still the same. You got that nice bead, continuous on the outside as well the inside. And at the corner walls, I like to put a little bead right up in that corner there as well, just because you've got those two corners coming together to stop that airflow. Nice and flush. We're ready to nail it off. We've got our top plate in and we're getting ready to assemble our cap plate. But one thing I did want to mention that, you know, this is in a scenario to where the cap plate would be for if there is a truss system on top or a second floor. But if this was a full SIP envelope, this wall would be beveled. You would have your top plate. The sealant would still be applied to the top of this wall here before the roof panel goes down. So we want to use that sealant in every application where we're trying to stop that airflow. So regardless of whether it's a wall or a roof envelope system, we're going to apply that sealant in the same fashion. And just like standard construction, our double plate goes past that exterior wall. So when we put that cap plate in, it's going to run past our first panel here into our second one corner. So it also helps attach that. Continue on with our cap plate. So what I do is I put a nice little bead right where those two are going to come together. And then I run that across there. Making sure that anytime you've got two pieces that are connecting together, to do the same thing here. Just put a nice little bead of sealant between the two ends, so that way when you bring them together, and also making sure that you're overlapping your seams on your panel as well. So we're just using that sealant to tighten up this envelope as tight as possible. And then I've got my sealant in the corner, so it's not allowing airflow through on the ends or through the middle of it, and I'm all set with my cap plate. But I wanted to point out how even after drying, you know, it still is easy to peel off, so your drywaller, and then also that sealant itself maintains that elasticity, and even though this is fully hardened. Just to show you the flexibility of our sealant that we use, I've taken a couple 2x here, and you can see that there's no nails in it. It does flex for us, and you can see that sealant in there, but I definitely cannot pull that apart. But I'm getting that nice bond of sealant to stop that airflow like I want to have. To finalize things and finish up when applying sealant, we just want to make sure, as I stressed, that you get a continuous bead throughout the system. So one thing we don't want to have is like this type, where we've got this gap, so we're not getting continuous, you know, bead across the panel system. So again, this is going to allow for airflow for potential problems down the road. So we want to make sure it's a continuous bead of sealant throughout the entire system.